He thought it was just another cold night, until a trembling knock changed everything. A soaked teenage girl stood on his porch, shivering and alone. What this struggling single dad did next would unravel a secret he never saw coming. The rain tapped against the window in uneven rhythms, the only sound in the small house where a single father sat counting bills at the kitchen table. His fingers paused mid-calculation when the knocks came, 3 quiet raps barely louder than the falling water outside. The clock read 11:37 p.m. No one visited this neighborhood after dark unless they had nowhere else to go. He crossed the room, hesitating before the door. The wood felt cold under his palm. His savings wouldn't cover an extra mouth to feed. His fridge held a half-eaten sandwich and 2 eggs. His couch had springs poking through the cushions. Another knock, this time weaker. He turned the knob. The girl on his porch couldn't have been older than 17. Rain plastered her blonde hair to her cheeks, her designer sweater now heavy with water. She hugged herself, arms shaking. Behind her, puddles swallowed the broken sidewalk hole. Something about her expensive leather boots lodged in his memory, one mud-stained, the other missing a buckle, even as she avoided his eyes. The bus, she mumbled to the ground. I missed the last one. Her voice cracked like she hadn't spoken in hours. 3 winters ago, he'd stood outside a closed shelter holding his then 4-year-old daughter after their landlord threw them out. That was before the overtime shifts, before the dingy apartment they now called home. The memory rose without permission, sharp as new frost. Come in, he said without checking his wallet again. The girl stepped over the threshold, water pooling around ruined shoes now dull under yellow porch light. She didn't ask his name, didn't comment on the cracked tiles or the lingering smell of microwave noodles, just stood there dripping on the welcome mat someone had left behind in the last eviction. He handed her the least frayed towel from the bathroom, the one he saved for when his daughter visited on weekends. Tea? He offered, already filling their only intact mug, the blue one with the chipped handle. She nodded, studying the peeling wallpaper behind his head. You don't have to, I know. He set the kettle on the stove with a clank. Couch folds. Out. Probably more comfortable than a bus station bench. Her fingers tightened around the towel. He thought she might bolt back into the storm until she spoke again. So quiet he nearly missed it. I can leave before sunrise. The fridge hummed in the pause that followed. He should have asked her name. Should have questioned why someone wearing a watch worth 6 months' rent needed refuge here. Instead, he said, stay till the roads are safe, and watched relief flicker across her face before she masked it. She took the tea with both hands, like it might shatter. The rich floral scent filled the tiny kitchen, the fancy kind he only bought for special occasions, a gift from his sister last Christmas here, he said, nudging aside laundry to clear space at their 2-person table. She sat slowly, back straight as if balancing something fragile. Outside, the storm lashed the windows harder. Neither spoke of the unopened stack of overdue bills beside the salt shaker, or how her cashmere sleeves now sported pulls from the rough fabric of his chairs. At some point, she stopped shivering. Parents must be worried, he tried. Her cup clinked against the table. They don't notice much. She traced the chip in the mug's glaze. Your place smells like crayons. My kid, he said, and for the first time, her gaze lifted to meet his. She had eyes like the sea glass his daughter collected, green with something fractured beneath the surface. The tea was gone when she asked about his work, his hands still rough from 12 hours at the auto shop. He told her about the customers, who shorted payments, the boss who docked wages for attitude, the way $5 in the gas tank sometimes came before food. More than he'd told anyone in years. Dawn crept in gray under the curtains before either of them moved again. The girl stood abruptly, folding the towel into a neat square on the counter. Her drying sweater still carried the ghost of some floral perfume he couldn't name, out of place among the bleach and motor oil smells of his world. The rain stopped, she said, though the gutters still dripped outside. He glanced toward the couch. You could wait till... But she was already at the door, hand on the knob. Thank you, she said, softer than the rain had been. Then she was gone. The only proof she'd existed being damp footprints on linoleum and the faint tea leaves at the bottom of his best mug. The note appeared later, wedged between the sugar bowl and a pile of coupons, plain notebook paper, crisp despite the humidity. He unfolded it, expecting thanks for the tea, or maybe an apology. Instead, 2 lines in neat looping script. I won't forget this. 555-214-0991. Call before 8 p.m. He turned the paper over. Nothing on the back. No signature, no explanation. Just a phone number written with the same care she'd used folding that borrowed towel. For half the morning, the note lived in his pocket while he scrubbed oil stains from his work pants, the digits pressing against his thigh through the fabric. At lunch, he smoothed it on the counter beside his sandwich crusts. The girl hadn't asked for his name either. Hadn't touched the family photo on the shelf where his daughter grinned gap-toothed from last summer's birthday. But she'd listened when he talked about missing too many bedtimes, about choosing between rent and new school shoes. The shop's wall clock ticked past 7:52 p.m. when he finally pulled the scrap from his pocket at work. His boss shouted over a compressor's whine, but the girl's voice, if it was even her, had sounded young. Kids shouldn't be alone in storms. He dialed. A man answered on the second ring. This is Thomas Whitmore. The voice held the clipped precision of airport announcements, the kind that made you stand straighter without knowing why. Identify yourself. The grease under his nails suddenly felt darker. Your daughter left this number. She stayed at my place last... Address. The word came sharp as a blade. Now. He nearly hung up. Almost lied and said wrong number. But then the memory resurfaced. The girl's hands shaking around his mug. That single unguarded smile when he mentioned his daughter's crayon drawings. He gave the cross streets. Silence stretched so long he checked the call hadn't dropped. Then the man exhaled, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. You have no idea what you've done. A door slammed in the background, muffled voices. The man, Thomas, was saying something about hospitals, about private investigators, about 3 states searched. When she ran from the fundraiser, we thought kidnapping, then your call. A pause. Her mother hasn't slept in 72 hours. His own hands were sweating now. The boss glared from across the shop, but all he could see was that ruined designer sweater. You kept her safe, Thomas said. It wasn't thanks yet, not quite, but almost. A car honked outside the shop. Someone dropped a wrench with a clang, and in that moment, the struggling mechanic who barely made rent understood 2 things. That girl had money behind her, serious money, and she'd chosen his crumbling doorstep on purpose. Name your price, Thomas said, like it was that simple. He. Phone felt suddenly heavy. Tomorrow, the man cut in. My car will come at noon. Click. There was no arguing with a tone like that, the kind that moved people without asking. He stood there holding the silent phone, oil soaking through his shoes, knowing this stranger would send more money than he'd ever held at once. And all because he'd given a shivering girl a couch and bad tea. The girl sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea like it held secrets. Steam curled between her fingers as the father busied himself straightening the mismatched salt and pepper shakers. The towel he'd given her draped over her shoulders, already losing its absorbency to the water still beating at the ends of her hair. Every movement she made seemed calculated. When she sipped the tea, her pinky barely lifted from the cup. Aintu. Old habit from etiquette lessons that clashed with the ragged edge of the ceramic. Her coat, now drying on the back of the chair, had been folded with military precision, seams matching up exactly. Even her breathing came in measured intervals as if she'd practiced how to occupy space quietly. Long walk from the bus stop? The dad asked, leaning against the counter to give her room. She stared into her tea. 7 blocks. Her voice barely carried over the hum of the fridge. The cracks in their conversation stretched wider. He mentioned the weather. She nodded. He asked if the tea was all right. She said it was fine. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked 3 times before either spoke again. His gaze caught on her earrings, tiny diamonds catching the overhead light. There was a story there about why someone wearing jewelry worth his rent stood, dripping in his kitchen at midnight, but he didn't ask. Instead, he nudged the sugar bowl closer. You staying local? Her fingers twitched around the mug. Not anymore. A car passed outside, its headlights sweeping across the peeling wallpaper. She flinched at the sudden light, then caught herself. When her sleeve rode up briefly, he saw fresh scratches along her forearm, not deep, but angry red lines that hadn't been there long. The dad turned to refill the kettle, giving her privacy. Well, the couch isn't much, but it's dry. Got a spare blanket somewhere. She stopped him with a sudden question. That picture on the shelf, your daughter? The change in subject threw him. He followed her gaze to the school photo where his 8-year-old beamed with one front tooth missing. Yeah, Sophie. She's with her mom this week. How old? 8 last month. He swiped at a tea stain on the counter. Her birthday party was supposed to be at the park, but it rained. Had to cram 12 kids into this place instead. For the first time, her shoulders relaxed slightly. What kind of cake? Chocolate with these little edible pearls. Turned all, their mouths blue. He gestured to a faint scribble on the wall behind her. Someone got marker on the paint. I stopped trying to scrub it off after an hour. Something unreadable passed over her face. Her manicured nails, now chipped, tapped against the mug. You see her much? Every second weekend and Wednesdays after school. He didn't mention the 3 months he'd missed last year when his truck broke down and he couldn't afford the repairs to drive her. The girl studied the photo like it was a museum piece. She looks happy. She is, mostly. He thought of the Christmas gifts left unwrapped until January when overtime pay finally came through. Kids are resilient, you know? A moth bumped against the light bulb. The girl traced a water ring on the table with one finger. My nanny used to say that, right after my parents canceled another trip. There it was, the first real glimpse behind the polished veneer. He hesitated, then pulled out the chair opposite her. The legs screeched against linoleum. My old man worked construction, he offered. Left when I was 10, came back twice, once to borrow money, once to introduce his new girlfriend. The girl's grip tightened on her mug. At least yours had an excuse. Silence settled between them. The kind that comes when 2 people realize their pain speaks the same language. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. She surprised him then by asking about his job. Not the polite, what do you do, but real questions. How many hours did the shop demand? Had they ever missed payroll? Did the manager dock his pay that time? Sophie had pneumonia and he missed 3 shifts? He answered honestly, watching her file each answer away like evidence. When he mentioned choosing between new work boots and fixing Sophie's bike, she inhaled sharply. You ever worry she'll... The sentence died on her lips. Think I failed her? He gave a tired smile. Every damn day. Her posture changed then, shoulders curling forward like a marionette with its strings cut. She stared into her empty cup as if reading tea leaves. Nobody asked the rich kid why she ran away. The fridge clicked off, leaving the room suddenly quiet. They sat there in the dim kitchen, the only sound water dripping from her coat onto the chair. He waited. It was the necklace, she said at last. They gave me pearls for my 17th birthday. $32,000. Her laugh had no humor in it. I told them I needed bus fare for school that morning. He thought of Sophie's last birthday, how she'd hugged him extra hard for the second-hand bike he'd spent months refurbishing. The girl, no, young woman, looked up then, and for the first time that night her eyes held no guardedness. Just a quiet, exhausted understanding. Your daughter's lucky. Before he could reply, she stood abruptly, smoothing her borrowed sweatpants. I should sleep. Work tomorrow. 7 a.m. He gestured to the folded-out couch already piled with every spare blanket he owned. Extra pillows a little flat. It's perfect. And then, softer. Thank you. When he turned off the light, he caught the briefest glimpse of her slipping something under the sofa cushions, something that glinted metallic in the dark. Morning came gray through thin curtains. The dad found the couch neatly made, blankets folded with the same precision as her coat had been. Only the faint scent of floral shampoo suggested she'd been there at all. The note lay precisely centered on the kitchen table beside the chipped mug she'd used. 2 sentences penned in looping script he'd later learn cost $500 an hour to perfect. I won't forget this. Fee 5. 214-0991. Call before 8 p.m. Outside, the sun broke through storm clouds for the first time in days. He picked up the paper, feeling the weight of something more than paper between his fingers. Beneath the sofa cushions, he'd later find the dropped pearl earring. One tiny gem in a life full of them, left behind like a breadcrumb on purpose. The next morning, the kitchen looked just as it always did. The chipped countertop, the faint hum of the fridge, that one cabinet that never quite closed right. But on the counter sat something new, a folded square of crisp white paper next to the empty mug. The kind of paper that felt expensive between his fingers when he picked it up. He thought it would say, "Thank you." Maybe a quick scribble about catching her bus. But the handwriting was neat, deliberate. Last night meant more than you know, it began. Then came the strange part, a phone number and 3 words that made his stomach tighten. Call my father. He turned the paper over, half expecting more. Nothing. Just those 5 words and 10 digits that suddenly felt heavy in his hand. The clock ticked on the wall as he stood there, running through every bad scenario. Runaway, kidnapping, some kind of trap. His daughter's school picture on the fridge caught his eye, and for a wild second he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The paper stayed in his pocket all morning. At work, he kept touching it through the fabric of his jeans during his break. By lunch, curiosity had outweighed caution. He stepped outside behind the warehouse where the reception was better, took a breath, and dialed. It picked up on the second ring. Who is this? A man's voice, sharp like a new blade. Almost hung up. Your daughter stayed at my place last night. She left. Where is she? The voice changed, relief and steel mixed together. We've had teams looking for 3 days. A pause, then quieter. Thank Christ. The way he said teams, not friends or relatives. The kind of word that meant people got paid to do things. The dad leaned against the graffiti-covered wall, suddenly aware of his grease-stained shirt. When the man spoke again, his voice had that particular calm only the very rich could fake. Name your price, whatever you want for bringing her home. The warehouse buzzer sounded behind him, calling everyone back inside. He realized 2 things at once. The girl hadn't been some dropout, and the man on the phone wasn't just a father. He was the kind of father who could change lives with a single call. The voice on the other end of the line didn't sound distressed. It sounded like a man accustomed to control, each word measured like a knife throw in a circus act. This is Thomas Whitmore. He said it like the name should mean something, like it opened doors. The dad held the phone tighter against his grease-stained ear, suddenly aware of the garage noise around him, the pneumatic whine of lifts, the metallic clatter of tools hitting concrete. Your daughter stayed at my place last night. A pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. Address, the voice demanded. He nearly hung up. But then he pictured the girl's hands shaking around his chipped mug. How young she'd looked when she thought he wasn't watching. He recited his street name. The static silence stretched like taffy. Then, abruptly, stay there. The line clicked dead. The phone felt leaden in his hand. He stared at the cracked screen where oil had smudged the digits of the girl's note. Behind him, his boss barked something about brake pads. The clock read 7:59 p.m. His shift ended at 8. He waited by his dented pickup, engine idling rain onto the asphalt. Headlights swung into the lot. Not the company truck coming to relieve him, but a black sedan with windows tinted like sunglasses. The driver's door opened, A man stepped out wearing a coat that probably cost more than the garage's monthly payroll. His hair was silver at the temples, cut with the precision of a freshly sharpened pencil. He moved like someone who never encountered locked doors. "You're the mechanic." It wasn't a question. The dad wiped his hands on a rag that wouldn't get them clean. "Yeah." Up close, Thomas Whitmore smelled like leather and something herbal, expensive cologne mixed with jet fuel. His eyes flicked over the oil stains on the dad's coveralls, the broken taillight on the pickup, then settled on his face. "She say why she left?" The directness startled him. "No." A muscle twitched near Whitmore's jaw. 3 days. He said it, like a courtroom verdict. "We had private security combing 3 states, hospital alerts set up. Then she calls her mother from your kitchen landline at dawn." The dad remembered her hovering near the wall phone while he made scrambled eggs. Hadn't thought twice about the hushed conversation. Whitmore pulled a slim wallet from his inner pocket, the kind without creases. "This covers your time." A check fluttered between them. He didn't reach for it. "I didn't do it for money." Whitmore's stare sharpened. For the first time, the dad noticed the redness around his eyes. Not tears, but the aftermath of too many hours staring at screens and flight manifests. "Of course." The check vanished just as smoothly. "Then tell me what you want." The offer hung there like the hum before a thunderclap. Across the lot, his co-worker's radio blared static and a country song. The dad exhaled slowly, watching his breath fog in the chilly air. He thought about Sophie's last dental bill, the way she'd pretended not to notice when he said they'd go to the movies. Another time. Whitmore followed his gaze to where a help wanted sign hung crookedly in the garage window. "You trained?" "ASE certified. 12 years experience." A black-gloved hand appeared from the sedan's passenger window, the driver holding out a tablet. Whitmore scrolled without looking down. "We acquired Bentley Manhattan last quarter. Their service department is restructuring." He tapped the screen. Twice. Starting wage would be. The number he named made the dad's grip tighten on the truck keys. She said something. The words came out before he could stop them. About a $30,000 necklace. Whitmore stilled, not the frozen stillness of shock, but the predatory pause of a chess player deciding which piece to sacrifice. "Her birthday gift," he said finally. "She left it on her dresser." They both knew what went unspoken, that the necklace wasn't what she'd wanted, that no one had asked. Rain began pattering the oil-slicked concrete between them. Whitmore turned toward the car, then hesitated. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its courtroom edge. "You saw her. Really saw her." The dad thought of the girl's brief, real smile when he described Sophie's birthday party, of the pearl earring hidden under his couch cushion. Whitmore pulled a business card from his breast pocket. Embossed letters gleamed even in the garage's yellow light. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Ask for Charles at reception." The sedan door closed with a sound like a vault locking. As the taillights disappeared into the rain, the dad unfolded the check still crumpled in his fist. The amount could pay off his truck, replace Sophie's winter coat, fix the leak in his bathroom ceiling. He put it in his wallet. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed his ex-wife's number. "Can I take Sophie this weekend?" Under the garage fluorescence, the business card shone like an artifact from another world. Dawn came gray and damp. The dad shaved with the disposable razor he kept for court dates, ironed his least wrinkled button-down, and dug out dress shoes that pinched his toes. The pearl earring sat in his breast pocket like a talisman. At 9:45 a.m., he stood outside a Manhattan skyscraper that stabbed upward like a silver needle. His reflection in the revolving doors looked painfully out of place. A man built for torque, wrenches and oil changes, not marble lobbies. The receptionist didn't blink at his name. "Mr. Whitmore's expecting you, 42nd floor." The elevator had carpet. When the doors slid open, Whitmore stood waiting beside a wall of windows showcasing the entire city. He wore a suit the color of storm clouds, no tie. "Charles," he said, to the assistant hovering nearby. "Show him the service bay." The dad hesitated. "I didn't Whitmore cut him off with a raised hand. This isn't charity. My head mechanic quit last month. You'll earn every cent. He turned back to the skyline. But fair warning, I expect miracles from my team. The assistant, Charles, gestured toward another elevator. As they descended, the dad realized Whitmore never asked if he wanted the job, because some offers aren't questions. Under the building, the service garage stretched cleaner than most hospitals. 10 bays, each equipped with tools that probably cost more than his yearly rent. 3 technicians glanced up from their work, their uniforms, crisp with embroidery. Charles rattled off benefits, health insurance, stock options, tuition reimbursement. The words blurred together. The dad reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the pearl. The girl, Ms. Whitmore, Charles corrected automatically, then caught himself. She's at boarding school in Switzerland. They both knew it wasn't an answer. Back, upstairs, Whitmore was gone. Only a folded note remained on the desk. Parking pass enclosed. Start Monday. No signature, no conditions. The dad stepped back onto the street, blinking in the sunlight. Across the road, a bus rumbled past bearing an ad for Swiss boarding academies. He touched his pocket again, feeling the earring's smooth curve. Then he walked toward the subway, already calculating how early he'd need to leave to pick up Sophie. On Friday, the black sedan idled at the corner. Inside, Thomas Whitmore watched through tinted glass as the mechanic disappeared down the stairs. His phone buzzed with a Zurich area code. He answered on the 3rd ring. He took the job. Silence. Then a young voice, newly brave. Good. Whitmore slid the phone back into his pocket. To the driver he said only, Insure HR sends the insurance forms by 5. But when the car pulled away from the curb, he allowed himself one small smile. The car door opened without a sound, revealing leather seats the color of midnight. A polished Oxford shoe hit the pavement first, followed by a suit that probably cost more than the dad's pickup truck. Thomas Whitmore stood there, taller in person, his silver cufflinks glinting under the parking lot lights. The dad shifted in his worn work boots. They'd left damp prints on the polished concrete leading up to this office building. His first time inside a place with a doorman who'd eyed his jacket like it might contaminate the lobby. Whitmore didn't offer his hand right away. Instead, he looked at the dad's grease-stained knuckles and said, You didn't cash the check. The check had sat in his wallet 3 days now, the numbers growing heavier each time he reached for his bus pass. No, sir. A flicker of something passed behind Whitmore's eyes. Not annoyance, but reassessment. He gestured toward a pair of chairs by the window. Let's talk. The chairs were low, designed to make people sink in. The dad perched on the edge, back straight, elbows tucked. 3 floors below, taxis crawled like yellow bugs along Park Avenue. Whitmore spoke first. My daughter hasn't been to school in Switzerland for 2 years. He said it casually, like mentioning the weather. She checks in when she intends to disappear. The dad gripped his knees. The memory surfaced. Sophie clinging to him last visitation. Day when her mom's car pulled up, whispering, Don't go, into his shirt. You asked why she left, Whitmore continued. Same reason she stole her nanny's credit card at 14 to buy bus tickets to Ohio. Why she enrolled under a fake name at that public school last fall. He rotated a fountain pen between his fingers. Testing the fences. A secretary brought coffee in cups thin as eggshells. The dad left his untouched. She talked about your wife. Said she doesn't notice much. Whitmore's jaw tightened. He set the pen down precisely parallel to the desk edge. My wife coordinates 3 charity galas a month. Our daughter has had private tutors since kindergarten. There's a difference between neglect and... He trailed off, watching a plane cross the skyline. Suffocating her? The dad ventured. A beat of silence. Then, unexpectedly, Whitmore laughed. A single dry sound. You remind me of my first foreman. Man couldn't bullshit if you paid him. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, mirroring the dad's posture. Tell me about your garage. So he did. About the boss who docked pay for tardiness but clocked out early every Friday. About the time the Lift malfunctioned and crushed a rookie's foot. About Sophie's school calling because his child support payment came late again. Whitmore listened like a mechanic diagnosing an engine. Head slightly tilted, absorbing every irregular noise. When the dad finished, he tapped his wedding band against the chair arm. "You ACE certified?" "Master technician. 12 years. Ever work on Bentleys?" The dad shook his head. "Closest I got was changing oil on a Lexus." Whitmore stood abruptly. "Walk with me." They took the elevator down to an underground garage that smelled of wax and new rubber. Motion sensor lights flickered on, revealing a row of cars covered in fitted cloths. Whitmore pulled the cover off the first one. The Bentley gleamed like wet obsidian. "Company car for our head mechanic." Whitmore ran a hand along the fender, leaving no fingerprints. Previous one retired after 30 years, sent both his kids to MIT on this salary. The number he named made the dad's throat tighten, more than double his current pay. Health insurance, regular hours. "You're offering me the job. I'm showing you what's possible." Whitmore tilted his head toward the tool chest, each drawer lined with instruments so pristine they looked surgical. "Your daughter, how old?" 8. The word came out hoarse. The dad cleared his throat. "Loves science, wants to be an astronaut." Whitmore nodded as if this confirmed something. "Your background check came back clean. No DUIs, no warrants, just—" He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "This eviction notice from last year." Heat crept up the dad's neck. He'd spent 2 months in that truck with Sophie before scraping together first and last month's rent. Whitmore tore the notice in half. "Not relevant." The pieces fluttered into a recycling bin marked confidential. "What is relevant? You gave my runaway child tea and a dry blanket when you had neither to spare." A phone buzzed in Whitmore's pocket. He glanced at the screen, then silenced it without breaking eye contact. "Your daughter deserves stability, so do you." The dad thought of Sophie's last visit, how she'd pretended not to want ice cream when he checked his wallet and hesitated. How her Christmas list this year just said, "Time with Daddy." Whitmore tossed him the car keys. "Start Monday." The metal felt warm from his pocket. The dad turned them over in his palm, the teeth pristine, never used. 6 floors above, in a trash can, his past sat shredded into confetti. Whitmore was already walking away when the dad called after him. "Your daughter, is she okay?" Half turned in the fluorescent light, Whitmore looked for the first time like just another tired parent. "She asked about you yesterday. First time she's initiated contact in months." Overhead, pipes rattled with distant traffic. Somewhere above them, people in suits made decisions that moved millions. Here in this underground cave of polished steel and rubber, 2 men from opposite worlds stared at each other across an oil-spotless floor. The dad swallowed hard. "Tell her." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "Tell her, I found this." The single pearl earring caught the light as he held it out. Whitmore smiled, really smiled, for the first time. "Tell her yourself." He nodded to the Bentley. "That's got satellite phones in both headrests. Switzerland's only a button press away." Later, walking to the subway with the job offer folded in his pocket, the dad counted the hours until Sophie's next visit. He'd pick her up early, get the good ice cream this time. Maybe if he was brave, he'd even show her how to call Switzerland. 2. Bentley's keys burned a promise against his thigh all the way home. The mechanic's boots still smelled faintly of garage oil as he stood before the glass doors, though they were buffed to a shine that almost mirrored the building's logo. His new key card hung around his neck alongside the lanyard holding Sophie's latest school picture. He swiped it. The light flashed green. Inside, the service bay spread like a cathedral of chrome and rubber. Immaculate lifts, tool chests with every drawer labeled, air that carried hints of lemon cleaner instead of gasoline. His shadow looked unfamiliar, against the waxed concrete. 3 weeks ago, he'd been elbow-deep in a minivan's transmission, inhaling exhaust fumes while his manager yelled about quota shortcuts. Now the computer diagnostic screen before him displayed real-time diagnostics in 4 languages. The other mechanics had welcomed him with handshakes that felt like peace offerings. Javier from Bay 4 showed him where they kept the specialty, wrenches. Maria from Paint demonstrated the touch-up gun that mixed colors automatically. They all wore the same navy blue uniforms with embroidered names, but theirs were softened by wash cycles, his still stiff with newness. At lunch, he unwrapped his sandwich alone in the break room, staring at the locker they'd assigned him. Combination lock, towel hook, even a charging port, everything pristine. He missed the chipped yellow paint of his old locker, the one where Sophie had stuck dinosaur stickers years ago. The Bentley slated for his afternoon inspection gleamed under LED strips. Its owner had complained about a rattle near the glove compartment. No check engine light, no leaky fluids, just the quiet nuisance of something not sitting right. The dad ran his fingertips along the seams of the dashboard like he was checking a child's temperature. Need a second opinion? He turned to find Charles leaning against a tool cart, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms streaked with silicone grease. The assistant turned mentor nodded toward the car. Customer says it only happens when the satellite radio's on. Together they traced wiring harnesses until they found the culprit, a loose ground wire vibrating against a bracket. 37 minutes start to finish. Charles clapped him on the shoulder. Know how long our last guy would have taken to find that? The dad wiped his hands on a shop rag already going gray with use. How long? 3 days and 2 angry emails to corporate. That evening, as he keyed in the security code to exit, his phone buzzed. A notification from Sophie's school portal, a graded spelling test, all words correct. He saved the screenshot, noting the timestamp, 2:15 p.m., when he'd normally be begging the parts warehouse for expedited deliveries instead of helping with homework. The loft apartment Whitmore's HR department helped him secure wasn't fancy, but the pipes didn't groan when he ran hot water, and the shower head stayed in place. He hung Sophie's latest drawing above the microwave, a purple dinosaur wearing what might have been a mechanic's uniform. Saturday visitation dawned bright and uncomplicated. For the first time in years, he pulled up to his ex-wife's house, in something that wasn't on the verge of overheating. The Bentley's passenger seat still had that new leather smell. Sophie's eyes widened when he popped the trunk to reveal the bike he'd finally been able to afford, pink streamers and all. You fixed it, she scrambled onto the seat while he steadied the handlebars. Not just fixed. He tapped the bell on the right grip. Upgraded. They spent the afternoon at a real park with an ice cream stand, not the strip mall parking lot where they used to share convenience store popsicles. Sophie licked raspberry swirl off her fingers as the sun dipped behind oak trees, suddenly solemn. Daddy, does your new boss have a kid too? The dad wiped a smudge off her cheek with his thumb. A daughter, older than you. Does she like bikes? Above them, a plane drew a white line across the sky. He pictured the girl, no, young woman, from that rainy night, the careful way she'd folded her coat. I think she'd like yours a lot. Back at the loft, as Sophie practiced handstands in the cleared living room space, his phone buzzed again. Unknown Zurich number. The voice on the other end was warmer now, less guarded. Hey, no introduction needed. He stepped onto the fire escape for privacy, watching Sophie through the window as she balanced upside down against the couch. Your dad give you this number? A quiet laugh. I stole it from Charles's Rolodex. The rhythmic squeak of a swing set carried through the line. How's Sophie? He told her about the bike, the spelling test, the way his daughter had started leaving his lunchbox notes again now that he worked predictable hours. The young woman listened without interrupting, like she was collecting evidence. Next time she visits, she said finally, tell her there's a girl in Switzerland who thinks she's cool. A breeze ruffled the takeout menus pinned under his fridge magnet. Below, a neighbor's golden retriever barked at nothing. The dad exhaled slowly. You could tell her yourself. Silence stretched, punctuated only by distant playground noise. When she spoke again, her voice had softened. Maybe I will. The call ended without goodbyes. Inside, Sophie so. Sunday dinner smelled like garlic and fresh bread, a far cry from frozen pizzas and canned soup. The dad set out 3 plates without thinking, the new routine still sweet enough to surprise him. Sophie reached for the salad, Tongs, her bracelet catching the kitchen light. A gift from Zurich that arrived last month in a package with no return address. Is she coming tonight? Sophie asked, fingers tracing the silver links. He checked his phone out of habit. No new messages. Not this week. Exams, remember? Sophie nodded, spinning her fork in the pasta. They both knew the drill by now. The random appearances between boarding school terms, the late-night calls about philosophy books neither could pronounce. How a girl their neighbor once called that stuck-up rich kid now taught Sophie how to make Swiss fondue in their tiny kitchen. The dad glanced at the calendar by the fridge, where a red circle marked next Friday's date. Not a visitation. Day at not a bill due. Just his handwriting. Auto shop volunteer day. His turn to help students from the vocational school rebuild that donated Honda. Sophie scraped her chair closer to the table. Daddy, what if you hadn't let her in? The question hung there between the bread basket and the butter dish. He thought of that rainy night, how close he'd come to pretending he didn't hear the knock, how easy it would have been to chalk it up to neighborhood kids playing ding-dong ditch. Funny how one unthinking reflex opening a door could reroute lives. Then you wouldn't have that. He tapped her bracelet. And I wouldn't have met Javier's nephew who needed my old apartment when his lease ran out. The domino effect still astonished him sometimes. 16 people housed through referrals now, 14 jobs filled at Whitmore's garage from the training program. Later, while Sophie colored at the counter, he pulled a folded flyer from his back pocket, something Maria had handed him after their shift. Mechanics Without Borders needed volunteers to teach engine repair in shelters. He traced the logo, remembering his own night sleeping in the truck with Sophie. Tuesday's lunch break found him at Whitmore's corporate office. Not the marble lobby where executives buzzed about, but the 6th-floor conference room with mismatched chairs. Half the Whitmore Foundation board looked up as he entered, coffee stains on his shirt. The young woman, no longer a girl, sat at the head of the table, Swiss boarding school posture softened by Converse sneakers kicked up on an adjacent chair. Gentlemen, she said without lowering her tablet, meet our project consultant. The board members' polished shoes shifted. The dad counted 4 Rolexes, 1 silver-haired woman in pearls, and the faint scent of disapproval. He pulled out the grease-stained proposal he'd drafted between oil changes. We don't need more shelters, he said, spreading schematics across the mahogany table. We need skilled workers. His finger landed on the blueprint's northeast corner, a mechanic bay next to the soup kitchen. Teach homeless vets to fix cars, pay them while they learn. Silence. Then the silver-haired woman lifted the sketch. How many certified trainers could you provide? He named the number without hesitation. Knew each mechanic's schedule. By heart now. Who could spare weekends, who wanted evenings after their shift. The young woman at the head of the table smiled, the same rare, real smile from years ago in his kitchen. Funny. Dad said nearly the same thing when he started Whitmore Steel. She tossed a key fob down the table. We're funding 3 locations. You'll oversee the Bronx one. The drive home took twice as long in rain that mirrored that long-ago night. The Bentley's wipers kept pace with his thoughts. How fragile it all was. Miss one knock on the door, and The mechanic stood outside the community center, watching veterans and trainees cluster around donated cars. Sophie tugged his sleeve, pointing at the girl in paint-splattered coveralls demonstrating engine diagnostics. The same hands that once folded a borrowed towel with boarding school precision now gesturing freely. Tables of food lined the walls, courtesy of the Whitmore Foundation. A young mother accepted keys to her refurbished minivan while her toddler played with Sophie's dinosaur stickers. That night's rain-soaked knock echoed in every handshake, every repaired transmission, every changed life. We rarely see our turning points coming. Sometimes they just knock. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more.